To order a regular, oh, Mike, you ready? I'll call to order a regular meeting of the Willington Board of Selectmen. Today's August 3rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. And I'll just note all three selectmen are on the call, and Catherine Holcroft is pinch hitting for Robin, who's taking a well-deserved vacation this week.
Yes.
So our first order of business is approval of minutes from our July 6th, 2020 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 6th meeting as written.
I'll second. Is there any discussion? Nothing? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. The next item is present to speak. If you are on this call, it looks like everybody here is.
Excuse me, Erica, how about the July 15th minutes?
I apologize, Joe. John, those aren't in my packet. Hang on one second. Do you each have a copy of them?
I do.
Slides of view. I only have one copy of the minutes in our packet.
You're going to have to table them, I guess.
So, so I had just one, so we will address them at our next meeting and make sure everybody gets a copy of them. Oh, we had a special meeting, didn't we? 7:15 special meeting. Okay. All right, so moving on to present to speak. If you are on the call and would like to speak, you can unmute yourself. Ooh.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Yes, if you just recognize yourself for the record.
Wayne Knight.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Back in January, the first meeting of the year, it was stated that we had sent out concrete samples from the pump house, from the Senior Citizen Center, from the library. A month later, it appeared in the minutes that a resident said he was going to receive the reports of the samples. That was in February. It's now 6 months later, and we hear crickets. There's nothing. We don't know where these reports are. We don't know who has them. The town paid for them. They don't appear on the town's website. So where are they?
Okay, thank you. I will note, just for the record, this item is on the agenda under new business. Is there anyone else present to speak? You have the ability to unmute yourself. You do not have to appear on camera. You can simply speak, or you can click under participants tab and raise your hand to be recognized. If no one has any other reason to speak, there will be a present to speak at the end of the meeting. You can always email this office prior to a meeting or during the meeting. So moving on, there is a list of correspondence in your packet. They are all available. And I believe you received many of them individually, including resignation, abatement information from Willington Hill Fire Department, a complaint from a resident on the green, etc. First, Selectman's report. So I have a few things to talk about. As you are aware, our typical tax collection date would end with anything either received in-house today or postmarked by August 3rd. This would have been our normal end of the July tax collection period. The governor's executive order allowed us to make a choice of deferment, which we did, which defers without penalty taxes until October 1. So to date, and this is just what we've received in-house today, so we could still be getting things in the mail that typically there's a lag time for things that are postmarked today. So July may see a larger difference in this, but we've to date collected 5,722,283,36 I'm sure I didn't read that right. We're short from last year's July collection in a normal collection effort by approximately $577,000. So while it's short 577, I think it's much better than any of us had anticipated. I certainly was concerned that we would be short a lot. I know we discussed this and we were nervous about what that would mean. 577,000 is a lot. It's certainly nothing to scoff at, but it's not nearly the deficit that I believed we would have. So it still gives me enough cause for concern that, as you know, I'd sent a memo at the beginning of this pandemic, freezing spending in the town to only necessary spending. Anything else had to be approved. And we're still going to continue that, not knowing if something else will change, if we will need additional dollars for additional COVID-related expenses, etc. So I think it's the best thing to do, the most prudent thing to do. But again, I think we're in a pretty good place with that tax collection rate. Also, we had a resignation 2 weeks ago, Monday, July 20th. Amy Lamb, our town clerk, resigned. She gave us 11 days notice. With an election, I apologize, on a primary next week, that left us with a hole to fill quicker than we could possibly put a new town clerk in there. So we've aided the help of a former town clerk from Tallinn, Sue Litwin. She was in today helping us in that office. So I want to thank her for being able to help us out in advance of the primary next week. The job was posted on Friday, the 31st. The delay was twofold. I was on vacation when all of this took place. And as you both know, we had a current staff member express interest in speaking with the Board of Selectmen regarding that. We have a policy in place in how we handle job vacancies and postings, and it allows for the board to skip some of that process and promote someone from within. So my original plan was to have that discussion as a board. Again, as you now are aware, and both received a letter that staff member rescinded the intent to be considered for that position. So we went ahead and posted that position on Friday. It will close on Thursday, August 13th. Then we'll need to begin to look to plan for interviews. So I would like for us as a board to participate in that, and then I would ask in the aid of a couple of town clerks in the area who've helped us out in the past, and I'm going to reach out to them if you are both willing to sit on that interview committee. It's a vital job in the town, so I think it's important that we're all involved. So once I get all of the applications in, again, it was only posted on Friday, so we haven't seen any, but I have spoken to several people who called today asking about how they could submit an application. So unless one of you tells me you're not interested, you're in. And again, we're in a new world and trying to figure out the best way to handle this with people, not just from within the town, but outside of. How we do that, if we do that on a Zoom call, if we do that in person with some serious social distancing, we'll have to take a look at what the best way to handle that is. So I'll be spending the next couple of days planning all that out and get back to you on that. I will also mention that as of Friday afternoon, we received a notice of retirement from our assistant town clerk. Maureen Gantic has been with the town for 25 years and served us well. She'll certainly be missed. She has asked her retirement be effective October 2nd. So that gives us time to plan and have a little bit of overlap in training with someone so that there is not a gap in personnel when that happens. So I appreciate Maureen giving us some lead time on that. As you, again, as I'm sure you've heard, there is a primary next Tuesday, August 11th. The plan is to close the building to staff, so it only remains open for voting with the exception of the registrars and the town clerk's office as they participate in the election. The Secretary of the State provided a secure ballot box to all 169 towns for absentee voting. Our box finally arrived late Friday afternoon. So this morning, thanks to Jeff Summelrock and Public Works, it was installed right outside the front door, so where it will remain open for residents to drop their ballots in. This is a primary for registered Democrats and Republicans. So we have a closed primary system in Connecticut. So if someone is unaffiliated or affiliated with a minor party, they would not have received a ballot and would not be participating in this particular primary. So I don't want them to feel like they were left out for any other reason except they do not have the ability to vote currently in this particular election. Our new finance software is up and running. Our finance department is doing a fantastic job dividing their time between old system for last fiscal year, new system for this fiscal year. Starting tomorrow, department heads and members of the Board of Education staff who handle requisitions will begin getting training on that new software. So tomorrow morning, half of the staff here will be in training. Thursday, the other half of the staff, and then myself and administrators with the school will get a different kind of training. The fuel tank replacement at Public Works we now have a date of August 17th when they plan to begin work. Correct, Troy? Nothing's changed since we last spoke. Okay. They anticipate the replacement taking approximately 3 weeks. That should coincide with the beginning of school, so there should not be an overlap. It does leave us without fuel at Public Works while they take the old tank out and put the new tank in, which is why you see an item on our agenda later to handle our fuel policy so that we're able to get fuel off-site. When they were looking at coming earlier in the summer, we were concerned that we would have a lot of fuel in that tank and it would cost us quite a bit to have it pumped out and then wouldn't be able to use it. Because it's taken longer, we've utilized that fuel. We haven't gotten a new fuel delivery, so we're hoping to lose very little fuel in that tank. Troy tells me today we have about 1,000 gallons there. So everyone will be able to fuel up before it goes out, and then we'll fuel, depending on the outcome of our policy change, at local gas stations after that. Troy, anything else you'd like to share about the fuel tank replacement? Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments from the Selectmen? All right, we'll move on to Public Works update. Since Troy is on the line, I will let him update you.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Roadside mowing is still going on around town. We've mowed Hall's Pond, the retention ponds, and we've mowed the transfer station and the Public Works garage. We repaired a couple of catch basins on St. Moritz Circle. We've cleaned off catch basins due to the heavy rain. They get clogged up. We've been digging out waterways. We installed the radar sign on Schofield Road, the electronic one. We'll be moving that in a couple of weeks once we get some data over there. We've installed some new speed limit signs on Daleville Road. Crack sealing has been done by contractors. We did about 5 miles of road this year. Linden Tree has been in town removing some hazardous trees that have been killed by the gypsy moth. We've helped Parks and Rec with the setup at the park, trash pickup. We've fixed numerous washouts around town, cleaned up the shop, and today we picked up some desks for the Board of Education from another school. And we put the basketball hoops back at the park. And that's about it. And chip sealing was supposed to be scheduled for beginning of July, middle of July. But with the COVID and everything's going on, now they're looking the middle of August. So I can give a list of roads real quick. We're going to do St. Moritz Circle, Lutheran, Hall Hill, Timber Lane, Kutchko 1 and 2. So we won't be doing the dirt part, just either side of Kutchko. Latham Road, Burt Latham, and Adamac. Those are the roads that are going to be chip sealed this year.
That's my excitement over chip sealing. All right.
And yeah, and if people are parked on the road during that time, I'll go around and let everybody give a notice and we'll do an email. But if they can park off the road, it makes their jobs easier when they spray.
And we'll send out a public notice when Troy has an actual date when they're going to begin. So it will give people notice that they're going to be out on those days. So they have some time to move their vehicles. And Troy, the crack sealing that that was done by contractors, that was in advance of the roads that are being chip sealed?
Some of the roads were going to be chip sealed this year that we did, and the following year that we did. So I actually had a little bit of money from last year's budget. So we kind of did a little bit more than what we actually planned. So
Okay.
we're ahead of actually this time.
All right, great. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll move on to new business. We have 2 appointments. I'll start with the first. The Board of Education met on July 14th to choose their representative, asking us to appoint to the Emergency Communication Task Force Committee. And they voted unanimously in favor of Superintendent Stevens representing them. So I'll move to appoint Philip Stevens to the Emergency Communication Task Force Committee to represent the Board of Education, effective August 3rd, 2020, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
Second.
Motion seconded by Liza. Any discussion? Okay. Thank you to the Board of Education and Mr. Stevens, who has a very full plate, but I think communications and matters like this is perfect for him to handle and speak for the Board of Education. All right, all of those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimous. The second is we received a letter from Don Berg, Chair of the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority had a vacancy left by a resignation, and then unfortunately we had a resident who was serving on that committee who passed away suddenly. So I want to send our condolences to Mr. Forkey's family. I was saddened to hear that news, but that left us with another vacancy and someone willing to step up to sit on the Housing Authority. So I'll move to appoint Jack Moskus as a regular member of the Willington Housing Authority to fill a vacancy effective August 3rd, 2020, expiring August 1st, 2025.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I want to thank Mr. I hope I'm saying your name right, Mr. Moskus, for your willingness to serve in this capacity. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimous.
Erica, I missed the opportunity to discuss. I was trying to figure out how to unmute. This is Don
I
Berg.
apologize, Don. I think, we received your letter, so unless the board had questions, we thank you for your the name for consideration and your member for stepping up. So thank you.
Oh, could I say something, please? Could I say something, please? I just wanted the board to be aware that we are still short one member on the Housing Authority. So if they know somebody that's interested, please advise us.
Thank you. All right, the next item is to appoint a chairman of the Emergency Communication Task Force. So we now have a full task force committee, and we can begin meeting, again, in this Zoom capacity until we begin meeting in person, but we need a chairman. And this board asked that we wait until we had all members to see who the Board of Education was going to present. So I would entertain a motion for a chair.
Was there any kind of a consensus among the people there as to who should be the chair?
No, and several of the members at large are new to the committee. They're new to current active participation in town. So it does not surprise me that no one stepped up speaking out that they wanted to be. Because my name is also on that committee, I did not. I thought maybe I'd let the discussion be led by the two of you to begin. Both of you are so quiet. It's not like either one of you. So.
Well, Erica, I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, who's on the committee that has the experience to, sort of, and the knowledge to run the committee?
The chair. So
Be
I would say
you?
myself, Christina, Mike, although as the chair of the Board of Finance, he certainly has his hands full there as well. Stuart has experience.
And nobody's expressed
Alex.
any interest?
No, but no one's expressed disinterest either.
Oh, gosh. Can they, like, if we appoint somebody and they have a really big problem with it, are they able to come back to us and be like,
Absolutely.
no, thank you?
I don't want to assume the role, but I would be willing to chair that. But I would be open to a member of that committee being the chair. Either way.
I was thinking while you were saying that Stuart, this is kind of his bailiwick anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Very good chair.
Yeah, he does sit as chair as a CIP. We're about to start meeting there again. Chief Moore is representing EMS. That certainly would be a direction to go as well. He and Stuart both fill a role as emergency management director. EMS.
I'd also say Christina.
Oh, I did. I said Christina. She definitely has the experience.
Yeah. Because she has the experience from a very big picture side of having a really good working knowledge of everything.
I really don't know enough about our members at large to know if the experience that they bring to the table, they would feel comfortable, or I feel like anyone that we choose on this committee could easily do the work chairing the committee. But yes, I agree. Christina certainly has the bigger picture.
The members at large, I think, are mostly pretty much just sort of getting their feet wet here. And
I agree. I think they bring outside world experience, but not having that I know of sat on a board in town, might make it a little bit.
For a while before we shove them into that space. So I think we probably should not have any of them.
Okay.
And
I apologize for the light streaming in here. There we go. It's one of those.
so, are you feeling up to it?
Sure.
Okay, then I would make a motion that we appoint Erica Wyszynski as the chairman of the Emergency Communication Task Force Committee, effective immediately. And is there a date on here? Is this till the
charge
Till the charge of the committee is
completed.
the charge of the committee is completed?
Second.
All right. Motion made by John, seconded by Liza. Any other discussion?
I would only say that I think if there is somebody else that's interested, because they haven't met yet.
That's right.
So,
And once we come back, I would absolutely be willing to have this discussion again, chair the first meeting, and let that board decide its own chair. And
that makes sense.
Come back with that. If you're okay with that and letting that board choose its own, I can begin, and then we can go from there if this board is satisfactory with that. Okay. All right. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I will abstain. Okay.
You're not voting nay?
Not voting nay. I'm going to be kind and not vote nay. So thank you very much. We'll set a date and begin working. So look for that to hit your inbox soon. Okay, this will answer to Mr. Knight's concerns. The next item on the agenda is presentation of the report of concrete evaluation in 3 municipal buildings. Mr. Knight is correct when he said at the beginning of the year we had anticipated the results back just prior to COVID. We were hoping to have, we were thinking within the month of March we would be getting a report, and then COVID happened, and for various reasons, Mr. Toulis, it took him longer than we had anticipated. We received the reports this morning. I can honestly say I have not been able to thoroughly read over all of them today. Just coming back into the office, I have many pressing matters, so I look forward to reading them thoroughly, but I'll ask Ralph Toulis, who is on the line, to present his reports to us, and then there'll be an opportunity for the board to ask questions.
Okay, I'm here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just a point that Mr. Knight had made earlier about the town having paid for this. I would take exception to that because no money has changed hands until this report is complete. All right, moving on. I'm going to try and share my screen here. I hope it comes through for you folks. If I can figure out how to do this. Can you see this?
We can.
Okay. I'm going to start with the pump facility over at the senior complex. I don't know how many folks have had an opportunity to actually explore this building. It was built around the same time as the first apartments. I believe that was around 2004. As now, my focus tonight is going to be on the core sampling and the core examination results. So what we have is, let me see if I can, there we go, a little bit bigger. For this building, this was the highest finding as far as potentially reactive aggregate. About 15% of the coarse aggregate in the concrete is considered to be reactive. There is no evidence of any sort of internal distress or internal cracking, which is one of the initial effects of the breakdown of pyrrhotite. Now, as far as any surface effects, other than some normal deterioration on the retaining wall behind this building, and you can see that in the pictures that follow, there's no evidence that there's any serious deterioration of that building. The 15% reactive aggregate is a relatively low number. I would not have expected 0. Any concrete in this area generally has some amount of pyrrhotite, anywhere from trace amounts to way too much. It really depends on the aggregate itself. I'm not going to read this to everyone, it's here. But I do want to flip through some of the pictures. As far as the structure itself goes, I don't think there's any alarm bells going off here. Yes, there's some of the mineral in there. It's unusual to have perfect concrete with no deleterious minerals in it. Concrete done well can tolerate the fact that not everything's perfect. The building itself is fine. It's the main entry door. This retaining wall, which is on the southeast side, surface appearance is really starting to deteriorate, but I think that's mostly due to the parging that was applied to make it look pretty, which is a common thing with a lot of commercial work. It's just a cementitious coating that's applied to hide some of the air pockets, bug holes, whatever you want to call them, as well as the formwork joints and the tie holes, the holes left from the form ties. Being a retaining wall, the prep for that coating probably wasn't done very well. And consequently, you'll see in some locations, like right here, along this edge, it's starting to peel off. And there's a variety of reasons why that occurs. But in my estimation, this is not a critical part of the whole structure. This wall is not monolithic with the foundation wall for the building, this back wall of the building behind here. So if it were to really deteriorate, I don't see it as an issue. It can be replaced. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do that, but it wouldn't be catastrophic as far as the function of the building. And you can see as I flip through the pictures here, another spot where that coating is peeling off. You can see it right here. It's the very end of the retaining wall. It's not very high. Behind this are the tanks that hold the water. They're buried underground. And when we get into the interior, these are the ends of the water tanks. This is the one wall that is essential as far as the tanks and the water system. Consequently, core sample was taken right behind this red panel here, down low, because this is the one wall we're concerned about. So the only issue with any building, any structure that has concrete that does contain some degree of peritite is to manage water, be it groundwater, be it rainwater. The goal is to keep the building as dry as physically possible. We have good drainage around the entire facility. There's no evidence of water ponding against the building. The roof does not have a gutter. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea at some point in time to add that, but even if it's not, we'll flip back to an outside picture. We've got a single pitch roof. Water's coming off on the sidewalk on this side. And it's really draining away from the building because the sidewalk does pitch down. It all pitches to the back corner down here. So I wouldn't consider that to be an urgent improvement, but it's something that could be considered. And the one main difference between these three buildings and the typical residential problem is that this is all reinforced concrete. There's steel reinforcing in these walls. And that does a lot to help maintain tightness in the concrete. It distributes the normal shrinkage cracks uniformly across the entire length of a wall so that each crack is so tiny that it really can't be seen, except in locations where it was anticipated. Control joints are common. They interrupt the reinforcing steel in the wall to force concrete to crack at a particular location. And there's ways to manage that joint so that it doesn't, structurally, it's not an issue. All we're trying to do is control where concrete cracks so that we can accommodate it. Concrete is going to lose volume as it gets hard, and consequently, that's why it starts to crack. By minimizing the size of shrinkage cracks, we tend to mitigate the penetration of moisture into the concrete. And anyone who's familiar with the phenomena of peritite breakdown knows water and oxygen are the two key elements that cause it. So I don't think we've got a big issue with this building is my main point. Moving on. Any questions on this particular building from the board?
John or Liza?
No? Okay, let me see if I can get to Give me a second. I got Zoom's controls popping in here. Senior Center. All right. Again, we have another foundation that has 11% of the course aggregate is considered reactive. And let me explain what that is. By potentially reactive aggregate, we're really kind of spotlighting the fact that, number one, the rock has pyrrhotite in it. And number two, the rock is of a composition such that water can penetrate it. And we combine moisture with pyrrhotite and some oxygen, and we have issues. Other rock that's not considered to be reactive aggregate is essentially impervious to the penetration of water. Yes, it may have some pyrrhotite in it, as we can see by this number here. 54% of the aggregate does have some pyrrhotite, but only 11% of it is considered to be reactive, which is a good thing. I've seen these numbers much, much higher as far as reactive aggregate on a 25 to 30-year-old foundation with no deterioration whatsoever. A little bit of internal cracking, but no external, no visible cracking at all. So there's not a consistent number that you can say below this is good and above it is bad. It's got to be a case-by-case basis because of the environment around the foundation. One of the comments that I have here is this paragraph is I owe a condition assessment of these two buildings, the senior center and the library. And by condition assessment, what I'm talking about is the cracks that I did capture in photographs, their location, and why they're there. Those things I attempt to explain in that portion of the report. What I really wanted to do was to get the core exam results in front of everyone so that there's some time to absorb what's in this report, because you will find that I've included all the lab report in here as well. Okay, back to that. Senior Center, on the back wall, there are some cracks that are intentional, control joint type cracks. There are also, there was also one shrinkage crack that is shrinkage for settlement crack, which is really not surprising. The entire building is, the majority of the building is a slab on ground construction. There's no basement except for basically the east end of the building. And that's where all the heating system and the water supply is within the building. I had hoped to be able to take a core sample from within the basement, but it turned out that all the walls are sheetrocked, finished. So there was no way to, I didn't want to destroy that finish material to get at the underlying concrete to take a core sample. So ultimately, I wound up taking two cores from the back wall, which I believe is kind of the south side. One down very low on the east end of the building, but not just a little bit west of where the basement ended. And then the second core sample was taken from the west end, the same side, below grade. I had to dig a hole so that I could take a core from that area. The plugged hole is below grade now, so you can't see it. The other one is visible, clearly visible from the back of the building. The sidewalks do show a lot of particles that are not good aggregate. Some are indicative of pyrrhotite with the rusty stains on the concrete. There's a fair amount of mica, which is not a good material to have in concrete because it really doesn't bond to the cement in concrete. but they're not critical elements to the entire facility. Other than if and when they start to break up, they would need to be replaced. As far as the building itself, I think all three of them, it's kind of a wait and see, watch, observe, do an occasional walk around of the building, and see if anything's changed. And I will have a collection of photographs that will supplement this, that folks can compare back to this point in time. Okay, any questions on the seniors? Oh, as far as watershed on the senior center, it's fully guttered. All of the rainwater captured by the gutters goes into an underground piping system. So that has no adverse effects on the foundation as far as rainwater coming off the roof. Across the back, there is and I believe on the west side, there's a garden patch. I think some caution is advised there with respect to watering. We soak the soil next to the foundation. We can, if moisture can penetrate into the concrete, we're going to exacerbate a situation that would not be too beneficial to the foundation. But overall, I think the foundation's in fine shape at this point. It also, any visible concrete has this similar cementitious coating as the pump house has, so you really can't see a virgin naked concrete surface to do a visual assessment. So we're relying on core samples. Okay, moving on. Any questions on this building?
No, our Public Works Director, Troy, and I had the opportunity to go out the day Ralph was taking samples from the outside of the senior center. So it was an exercise in all things concrete. And later, Ralph didn't share with you, but you each should have a copy of the report so you can see the actual samples that he took. We will add copies of these reports to our website so that, that they're available for the public to read.
Okay,
No other questions? I guess we can go on to the library.
I'm ready.
Okay.
If you folks are.
John and Liza, I apologize, I can't see you.
I'm ready.
And our wonderful public library. Very interesting building, rather tough site to build on because of the slope. The first core sample I took was pre-fourth heart attack. So I got one core sample out of the library in November, and spent Thanksgiving Day at St. Francis because of a heart attack. And needless to say, it wasn't until late January, I think, when I did the final core samples. And the building is a bit of a challenge because my philosophy on taking core samples is generally I want to get one down low and a likely starting point of concrete placement, and a second or later core sample up high near the top of the wall. The goal being to try and capture an initial load or something close to an initial load of concrete and something close to a final load of concrete, because it gives us an opportunity and it gives the lab an opportunity to compare the composition in the beginning to what was arriving on site near the end. And I don't believe that we saw any anomalies there. The library, bottom line, potential reactive aggregate is about 13% of the total coarse aggregate. This is not a by volume. If you dig into the labs report, you can get percentage by volume or by weight. In working with a couple of labs on this whole issue, really focusing on the behavior of specific aggregate particles tells us a lot more than worrying about what's the percentage by volume of concrete. And to calculate percentage of pyrrhotite based on the volume of concrete requires several estimates of composition. So you're calculating a percentage, in this case, 0.5% by volume. There's 2 or 3 estimates that need to be made to get to that number. That's why I'm not inclined to rely on that as much as I am just examining the coarse aggregate particles and seeing how they're behaving and trying to evaluate what effect, if any, the pyrrhotite is having on it. Okay, back to locations on this building. The very first core was on the lowest side, well below the floor level, inside the lower level. It was a fun place to get to because of the slope of the site. That one was taken from outside. The other 3 samples were taken from inside in the storage room. One on the north side, it was just barely above the floor. Another on the east side, near the northeast corner, near the top of the wall, as high as my ladder would get me. And a second one on the east side, kind of directly below the main entrance to the library at grade level. And that was down there floor level. The wall thickness in both the pump house and the library was greater than the reach of my core drilling rig. I can completely penetrate a 12-inch thick wall. These walls are probably 16 to 18 inches thick. So each of the 5 cores involved, the pump house and the library, all have fractured ends because I drill in as deep as I can, snap the core, pull it out, and then plug the hole. In general, I don't consider this building any different than the other 2. Yes, there's pyrrhotite in the concrete. I don't expect we're going to see some serious issues if we pay attention and are diligent about maintaining a watertight building envelope. And we do maintenance on some of the masonry on this building because some of it's in very poor condition. And when I attach the condition assessment of this building, you will see a lot of areas that really require some attention now. Again, with the sidewalks, similar to the senior center, you'll find a couple locations where there's some rust stains on the surface of the concrete. Some of that's due to pyrrhotite. Some of that is due to particularly the stairs on the south side. There's a couple of rusty spots, and every indication is that there's a reinforcing bar in the nosing of the stair that is simply too close to the surface, and or concrete placement. Concrete wasn't consolidated well enough around that bar to minimize water penetration, and consequently the bar started to rust. So at some future point, some future year, I'm not going to try and speculate on how many years, those stairs will need some attention as far as repairing that concrete. In general, though, the sidewalks are in reasonably good shape. There's no serious cracking anywhere. In my observations inside the storage room, where we can see naked, uncoated concrete, there's no indications that there's an issue as far as cracking. And again, it was the same thing with the petrographic exam. Yes, there was some oxidation resulting from the pyrrhotite breakdown seen, but there was no internal cracking which is not a bad thing. Actually, a pretty good thing. I live in a house that has known Modus concrete, built in '87, 33 years old. I have 6% reactive aggregate in the concrete. There is not a crack anywhere in the foundation. I'm not going to lose any sleep over my house. Anyway, I think the pictures, the condition assessment will be helpful, but what I really wanted to do was at least get this much in front of the townspeople so we know what we're dealing with. You can see the 4 cores. And I do have a sample that I was going to give to the library director, along with a copy of the report. It's a polished sample that they examined. They were nice enough to return it to me, but he's moved on to other pastures, so I guess I can't give it to him.
You can give it to the library board.
Yeah.
There, they can properly
I'll
share.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything here. I'm going to focus on concrete.
Good.
I think that's about it at this point. So if you all have questions, I'm happy to address them.
So Ralph,
Yes, John. Go ahead.
You get very deep into this, and so I'm just trying to put in a simple case from what I saw on what you passed out today and what you just put up here. Basically, what you're saying is all 3 buildings have pyrrhotite in their foundations, but the concentration in all 3 buildings is relatively low. None of the buildings are currently showing any serious damage because of the pyrrhotite. I also read in the thing that there's perhaps the most important thing we can do right now is to make sure that we keep water away from these walls as much as possible, and that we're going to have to keep an eye on them in the future. I think especially with the library, to make sure nothing happens. Now, there's one thing I saw in each one of these pointed out that we have an advantage because these are all steel reinforced foundations, and that gives us an advantage over like a residential foundation that has no steel reinforcement. But that did raise one question. How about that? I assume that the steel reinforcement is because of code on municipal buildings that they have to have that. So what happened with that school in Tolland? Wasn't that steel reinforced, or?
I believe it was, John. I looked at the reports for Birch Grove because they did post them online, and the levels of pyrrhotite were phenomenal. And at some point, when you've got minimal pyrrhotite bearing aggregate in the concrete, the reinforcing can fight it quite a bit. And if it doesn't get the water, even better. The worst case with Birch Grove were the interior footings below grade. And some of those look horrible because there was just a very, very high amount of pyrrhotite in them. They're buried underground. Ground moisture got to it. And typically in the footing, the reinforcing steel is really only in the bottom, about 3 inches above the dirt.
Okay.
So if the expansion, because of the pyrrhotite, is happening, it can essentially split the top of the footing because there's no reinforcing in the top. It's all in the bottom. and the top corners were coming off. I mean, they were very badly cracked. The pictures that I did see.
So what I'm hearing is basically it was a very high concentration of peritite.
Oh, compared to what I see here, yes, very much so.
Well, that sets my mind at ease then.
I think that well, I'm not gonna editorialize on how that building got to the state that it did. I think it should have been caught prior to, but that's history at this point, and I'm not going to speculate on it.
Well, let's stick to the reports of the 3 buildings.
Exactly.
So while I tend to, agree with John, these numbers look promising. I think monitoring what we have now, we now have current, or we will, when Ralph completes 2 out of the 3 reports, have current photographic evidence of these
Right.
areas, as well as the sampling from the initial cores. And we have not had a problem to this point. And we did this to be as a preventive measure so that we knew what we were dealing with for planning purposes in town. So gives me some hope that with the lack of water in and around these buildings and the low percentage of pyrite, that we may not have an issue. It's not to say that we won't. And I just think it's a different way of reinforcing the building than with a residential home. I don't think that puts us at any less risk. It's all how the pyrite reacts, specifically with water. Is that correct, Ralph?
Well, yes, water and oxygen are the key triggers, without a doubt. I think that the difference between a residential foundation and a commercial building such as these is primarily the reinforcing steel. That goes a long way towards not allowing the multitude of shrinkage cracks to manifest themselves like I see in a residential foundation. By code, the newer residential foundations have, I think, 2 number 5s, reinforcing bars top and bottom in the wall. I have a very kind of flippant response about that. Is basically those bars are there to hold the pieces together when the wall cracks. They don't do a lot of good. In these buildings, we're talking about regularly spaced bars, both vertically and horizontally, over the entire expanse of a wall. So it's a completely different arrangement of reinforcing steel. Primary thing that it's doing is we're doing 2 things with these buildings. Number one, we're anticipating cracking, and we're going to put control joints in where we want the cracks to occur. Secondly, the presence of the bars forces the cracks to occur uniformly over the length of a wall, so that they are very, very minute, and you're not going to find them unless you go over the wall with a microscope. They tend not to permit water to enter the wall internally, which is to the benefit of the integrity of the wall in the long run. So I think, yes, it's there, but I think we're in much better shape. I don't think we're going to have the kind of issues that some of the homes have had, nor do I think we're going to have the kind of issues that Birch Grove had. I think that, as with any building, we've got to watch the building envelope, make sure that it stays watertight. We're going to have to eventually mitigate the water intrusion problem that's related to the transformer pad. And that's another conversation we can have. But overall, they're well designed with respect to stormwater, or at least rainwater falling on a roof. I did check the gutters on the library using a drone, and I do have video footage of that I will share with you folks. They're clean. There's no debris buildup in the gutters. Um, they're all connected to underground piping, assuming, of course, that piping has not gotten clogged by anything and is independent of any foundation drains. That's not going to contribute to a problem. The hillside that the library sits on, of course, that sheds water quite well towards the west. You should try and do a walk around the perimeter of this building. Water doesn't puddle next to that building. The only place that has the potential would be in the front, and we've got the gutters to intercept it. So sidewalks in both the senior center and the library, those are probably going to be the first things that may require some attention in future years. Other than that, I think we're
specifically because of COVID. Sorry, I missed
COVID.
Specifically because of pyrite. Is that your estimation, Ralph? I mean, I know that you didn't take core samples from those. We took.
No, I didn't. And well, they're not.
I heard you say for various reasons they may have issues. Do you think pyrite could be a leading factor in the deterioration of the sidewalk?
I think there's portions of sidewalk that are going to be, more than likely, are going to be adversely affected by pyrite. Okay. I also think that de-icing chemicals and freeze-thaw cycles and the quality of the concrete placement is also going to contribute to deterioration. I mean, we have a concrete exposed to the elements 100% of the year, and it's not going to last forever. Those sidewalks are going to, at some point, just like any municipal location, you wind up replacing sidewalks.
Okay, that's good to know. I would, the one thing we don't have today, and we don't have a complete report for the two buildings specifically, the senior center and the library. Would like to, when those are complete, maybe have a meeting, sit down with the library board. They may have a library director at that point, and representatives from the senior center. Jenny Arpin, our human services director, is on this call, so she's seeing some of this, but have someone from the senior center executive board be present so that we could have some dialogue with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully Ralph could answer some of their questions. So when we get that information, we'll look to set up a meeting with that specific item as the focal point. If all are in agreement, I think it's important so that they can have their questions answered and be able to take a look at the photographic evidence of not just the core samples, but of the facility itself. I think that would be helpful. And our public works director on the call tonight can see what's going on with not just the facilities, but the pump house as well. So we'll include Troy in that conversation. Ralph, do you know about how long before we can anticipate the completed report?
No, I've got that underway. It's just I have hundreds of photos on all three buildings, and I'm just wading through them, trying to pull out the pertinent ones.
Okay, if you could do that, I'd like to put these. In the meantime, I will ask for these three to be on the website in the format that they're in when we receive the updated version of the library and the senior center. Will update the website, but I think it's important to share this information.
Absolutely.
Sooner rather than later. So we'll ask for that to get done. All right, John, Liza, any questions, comments, concerns? It's certainly a lot to digest, Ralph. I thank you. Hopefully health issues don't nice to see you doing well. If you are unmuted, if you could just, I ask you to, besides those participating in the meeting, if you could mute yourself, or Mike, if you could mute those.
May I say something, Erica? I can't find.
There's a present to speak, Don, at the end of the meeting. That would be the appropriate time to speak.
At the end of the meeting. Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns for Ralph? Ralph, I thank you. Like I said, Troy and I were out there the day he was at the senior center. I think Troy was with him for some other times, so we got quite an interesting lesson. and concrete. It looks a little like fruitcake, but there's some interesting facts in there, and you could see some of the pyrrhotite in the samples that he was able to take. So I don't think it surprises any of us that there is in fact pyrrhotite in the samples that he took, but I am encouraged by the low levels of pyrrhotite, but still will wait to see how these things react.
Yeah, they just an added comment about pyrrhotite and the numbers of core samples that I've taken out of residential foundations. I think I have had only one instance in East Windsor where there was zero pyrrhotite. Even, and I'm talking concrete coming from other sources. So sorry about the phone. I can't. I was hoping my wife would grab it. So it's rare in this region of the country to have concrete that has zero pyrrhotite or pyrite, or it's because it's any iron sulfide. And it's there, and there's not much we can do about it. And if we were to just philosophically about the concrete industry, if we were to get extremely stringent about the criteria for the acceptability of the ingredients that go into concrete, the cost would go through the ceiling because it's just not there. You look at the quarry in New Britain, Plainville, you can see it on 84 when you go out west. That is a location where we have some great aggregate for concrete, but you can't get an operation like that easily permitted in the current land use climate that we have. So we have to be able to accommodate the deficiencies in the material we're working with by the appropriate addition of admixtures and how it's handled, how it's placed, how it's cured, to produce a product that is resistant to the things that would attempt to attack it. And I'll get off my soapbox at this point. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
All right, I thank you, Ralph. Again, we recognize that there was a delay. There were many factors.
I apologize for that.
There, we did, to Mr. Knight's point, kind of browbeat him to give us a bill so that we could include it in last year's fiscal year. So we were working on that. We haven't closed the books for that. So it's not as though he had taken our money and run. We recognize that we were waiting for a completed report. So I look forward to that soon.
And by the way, Erica, you still have that check in your hands. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure that
we
point's
were
clear.
Waiting. Like I said, it
was just to close the books.
Robin very nicely, regularly made you send a request for billing. So it's again not as though he took our money and ran. So I thank you, and I look forward, hopefully very soon.
Very soon.
For the completed report. And again, in the meantime, we'll share what we do have. All right, any final comments, John or Liza? Okay, Ralph, thank you very much. I appreciate your work. Right, we'll move on to item D under new business, revising the fuel credit card policy. So you should each have a copy of the original fuel policy signed, adopted in 2011. That was to provide Public Works, our 2 fire departments, Animal Control Officer, and the Senior Center vehicles to purchase gas with a Right Express Universal Fleet Fueling Card. And that was just for gasoline purchases, as we have our own diesel fuel here in town. With the replacement of the fuel tank that we currently have, while they're doing the work, it's going to leave us without fuel at the Public Works garage. And we need to be able to fuel our emergency vehicles, our Public Works vehicles, as well as the Animal Control Officer, although she's a gas vehicle, so she can still do that. So we need to be able to make sure that we can obtain gas. The policy that, as it was written, was only for gasoline purposes. So the policy has been amended with, I'll highlight the two changes. There is an addition of verbiage that says, in the event of an emergency situation where the diesel tank at the Public Works garage is not in service, the Rights Express card will allow the purchase of diesel fuel for Public Works and Fire Department apparatus. That was one change. The only other change was removing a list of Willington fuel sites. And the one that was removed was Red and Art Service Station, as it's no longer in business. Those are the only two updates to the policy. So I would make a motion to approve the updated Town of Willington fuel policy, which has been updated effective August 3rd, 2020, to include diesel purchases by Public Works and the Fire Department.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's really, and in this case, the only reason moving forward that we need to do it is if something happened to our tank and it rendered it not usable, that then our policy clearly says, yes, you can use that card for both. They have to get receipts. There's still other caveats in there. They may not go out of state for fuel. They can't use premium fuel. There are some other policies still in place. This will just allow them to fuel while they finish our fuel tank. We're going to do this, hopefully, and it means that we don't have to do it. We'll have enough fuel, and it will go quickly enough that we won't have to use the policy. But it's there in the event. All right, so motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excuse me, motion carries unanimous. Item E, resolution for the 2020 Homeland Security Grant. I resolve that the Willington Board of Selectmen may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Energy Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deems to be necessary and or appropriate, and further resolve that Erica G. Wyszynski, as the first selectwoman of the Town of Willington, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the Willington Board of Selectmen, and to do and perform all acts and things which she deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents, including but not limited to executing and delivering all agreements and documents contemplated by such documents. The undersigned further certifies that Erica Wyszynski now holds the office of First Selectman that she has held that office since November 21st, 2017.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, we had to reinstate our pension plan for the Town of Willington, and it required a resolution. So I move a resolution for a reinstated pension plan for the Town of Willington. The undersigned, as the persons entitled to make decisions on behalf of the Town of Willington employer, hereby consent to the following resolutions. Whereas the employer has maintained the Town of Willington pension plan since 7/1/1979 and for the benefit of eligible employees. Whereas the employer has decided to reinstate the above reference plan to comply with the requirements of the Pension Protection Act of 2006, PPA, and the Heroes Earnings Assistance and Relief Tax Act of 2008, HART Act, the Worker, Retiree, and Employee Recovery Act of 2008, WRERA, and other applicable guidance. And whereas the employer wishes to appoint Donna Latinsik, Tish Ignatowicz, and Erica Wyszynski as trustees of the plan, now therefore be it resolved that the employer hereby adopts the Town of Willington pension plan as a complete reinstatement of the prior plan to be effective July 1, 2020. Resolved further that the employer is authorized to execute the restated plan document and perform any other actions necessary to implement the adoption of the plan restatement. The employer may designate any other authorized person to perform the actions necessary to adopt the plan restatement. A copy of the plan shall be retained in the business office of the employer. Resolved further that the employer will act as administrator of the plan and will be responsible for performing all actions necessary to carry out the administration of the plan. The employer may designate any other person or persons to perform the actions necessary to administer the plan. And further resolved that plan participants shall be provided with a summary of the plan provisions within a reasonable period of time following the adoption of the plan. Resolved further that this consent shall be deemed to be fully executed and delivered when each of the undersigned has executed at least one counterpart, but not necessarily the same counterpart hereof.
Second.
That's a lot of word salad. I believe I said reinstated earlier. It's just
Yes,
restated.
restated.
So I apologize for my error. It's just a restatement of the plan. And the trustees were changed. Donna was a previous trustee of the plan, along with two employees that were no longer here, an employee and then a former first selectman. So that's why there's a change in persons, is the big change in this portion of the plan. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, last item of new business. I will move to refund Celtic Holdings LLC an overpayment in the amount of $917.84.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, COVID update. I'll start by saying Willington now has 16 total cases. That is a cumulative number, and within those 16, we still only at any time had one hospitalization. So the 16 and the hospitalizations are cumulative, doesn't mean anyone is currently hospitalized. And since the one has not changed, I'm assuming our newest positive case is not hospitalized. I find some solace in that. Our residents have been fortunate throughout this event. But that means, what that means more to me is that our residents are really taking serious the warnings from our public health professionals at all. And I commend them for the work that they've done to maintain social distancing, to wear masks, to understand why we're not meeting in person, why we've had to delay some things. And they're really working hard to keep not just themselves and their families safe, but their neighbors as well. So kudos to our residents for doing their part and keeping the numbers in Connecticut as a whole down. So some things that have changed a little bit here in Willington. As of today, the basketball hoops at River Road are back up. Maureen is working on some signage that CCM has generously donated the cost of many of the signs that you're seeing on our buildings and around town to municipalities. So that has been a large expense we've been able to save. So there'll be signage with the rules and guidelines for various events and activities at River Road Park. I will remind the board as well as our public that we do not have a parks staff. We have a Parks and Rec director. So there is no one out there to clean the benches several times a day and clean the tables and the playscapes. So a lot of those things folks are doing at their own risk, again, with signage to such. And so it's important that they're aware of those things, should still maintain social distances, and should use frequent hand washing and approved hand sanitizers often. So hand washing is still your best bet, and wearing a mask is recommended. We've had 2 concerts in the park. That's one of the only things that we've been able to offer to our residents, and they are outdoors. We are following all of the governor's guidelines for outdoor events. I want to thank Troy and Maureen for their hard work. They go out there, I think they're doing it weekly, and marking off areas on the field. So you have a square that I believe is it 12 by 12, 6 by, it's not big. And your family unit fits inside that square. And then there's 15 feet between you and the next square where someone could sit. So there is quite a bit of social distancing out there. We're not seeing a lot of families attend these events. I think our residents are heeding the warning. If you're on social media, specifically Facebook, Maureen is Facebook Living the concerts. So we're encouraging our residents still that are in that vulnerable age range over 65 who are staying home. You can still attend the concert online if you have access to that and watch. I've done that myself from home. While I miss seeing our residents out and about, I think it's the safest way to attend currently. So there are, again, guidelines out there. They're on our website, and ask that folks follow those. We're still fully staffed here in the town office building and public works, and taking appointments for in-person services as necessary. The safety of our staff and our residents is at the forefront of all these decisions, and making sure that our residents get the services they need. And I still believe that those needs are being met. And so I thank those who have been patient with us. I don't know anyone who had to wait to get an appointment. We still have plenty of people come in to pay taxes or visit the assessor or the town clerk in person if it had to be handled in that capacity. And our residents have been understanding. If you do have an appointment at the town hall, you need to wear a mask when you come to visit us, and we have hand sanitizer around. So we still have all those same safety precautions in play. The transfer station is back up and running as normal, with the exception of the swap shed. The swap shed is still closed, so we ask folks not to leave things there. And that is the standard for many towns around us. I see there. There's really no way for us to police the social distancing in that aspect. That shed is awful small. I can only imagine the gatherings that typically happen there, and it would encourage people to gather, to talk. I know we miss seeing our fellow residents, but I'll remind everyone to wear a mask when you're at the transfer station. Our staff is masked as well. And if you have any other needs, you should be able to drop off any other things. The Mid-Nerock Chemical Waste Facility is back open on its schedule. Their first day was July 18th, and we just received a report just prior to this meeting that they saw about 125 cars at that first day. They believe that was their largest day ever, and about 85 cars this past Saturday, August 1st, which was a little bit more normal. So I think people held on to their chemicals, which is great to see, and were able to turn them in when they opened. And their next date is August 18th, and then again, because of the Labor Day holiday, only one day in September. And those dates, I believe, are all listed on the Public Works website, correct, Troy? Under either Mid-Nerock or Chemical Waste Facility. So, any questions specifically related to COVID? I give kudos to our residents, but I want to thank our staff as well. They've gone above and beyond in what's been some difficult days in Willington and ever changing, and they've rolled with it. They've done whatever we asked. They went right home and worked without much complaint. They are really doing a great job meeting the needs of our residents, whether it be someone in Jenny's office who needs help with a social service, whether it be someone who needs to come in and look in the town clerk's office, someone who needs a new permit. They're still getting their needs met, and our staff has really stepped up. So, I want to thank them and thank them. I've thanked them here before, but I want to thank them publicly. So, the next time you call one of these offices, know that they're working hard for you, and anything we can do to help with whatever your needs are, that's what we're here for. We're here to serve the town. So we're not perfect. This is a learning challenge for us, to say the least, but we're going with it, and we're all back in here. So I think I mentioned to you all that we'll be training on the new software. So tomorrow and Thursday, you might see quite a skeleton crew here of folks. So if you call, leave a message and be patient as we spend half a day learning how to use the new finance software. All right, any questions COVID related? Okay. All right, that brings us to present to speak. If there's anyone present to speak, you can unmute yourself, Troy.
Erica, Tom just emailed me about, he wanted to speak. He was having something wrong.
Yeah. I see that here. Don, I can read your email. This is from Don Berg. I was unable to raise a hand and unable to wait until the meeting was over. I'd like to add that last year I advised the library staff to not use typical road salt on the concrete, including the pavers near the main front entry, and they began using concrete safer salts. Pavers already exhibit breakdown. I think it would be wise to not provide any wrong salt, road salt, where it could be utilized on concrete sidewalks, and provide safer concrete ice melting for all concrete sidewalks. If that is your policy now, great. Thank you, Don. Anyone else present to speak? You can unmute yourself, or if you're on camera, which except for Troy, no one is, raise your hand. I'll give a couple minutes. And you do not need to be on camera. That's going once, going twice. Okay, I'll move on to good and welfare. All right, bear with me, I have a couple of items. I'm gonna remind you all again that there's a primary election next Tuesday, August 11th. It's for registered Republican and Democratic voters. The town office building will be open for voting only from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. The registrars will be implementing their Safe Polls plan. This is a plan they were required to submit to the state. And that, so the room may look a little bit different than a normal setup. So if you come in to vote, you should wear a mask. You will see social distancing. Entrance will be through the front door into the main room. And unless someone needs to leave because of ambulatory reasons out the main walk, they'll be going out the side door. So the idea is, as much as possible, there'll be a one-way in, one-way out. To allow for social distancing. Our building does not make it easy for coming and going and mixing people. So unless somebody needs the ramp, in which case they will be allowed to exit through the front door. They will go out the side door. So let's hope it's a nice day and not a rainy day, and folks can come in and out. So thank you to the registrars and the town clerks who have been working hard in preparation for this. And again, reminder, there is our official ballot box outside on the front landing. So we are anticipating tropical storm. Oh, I'm not gonna say this name right. Isaias. Tomorrow, late afternoon into the evening. We are expected to see minimal rain. The last report I had at midday was a ½ an inch to an inch of rain. The winds are what may be more concerning to our side of the state. So they could be, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So we just ask people to be cautious and be aware tomorrow evening. I wish it were just going to be some much needed rain we need around here. And I want to take the opportunity to express our sincerest condolences on the passing of a longtime resident, a former Willington Hill Fire Department chief, and former First Selectman Dan Avery, who passed away earlier this month. Mr. Avery was a wonderful man who dedicated much of his time to our wonderful community, and he will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Avery, for all you gave to Willington. Any other good and welfare items, John and or Liza? All right, I miss seeing you both. I don't know when we'll get back to public meetings. As you know, we don't have the capabilities in any of our rooms to hold many people with social distancing. We can't cut our public meetings off to a limited number of people, and we don't have the capability to live stream them with our current facilities. So we'll continue in this manner until we can safely meet someplace. The school is our largest venue where we would typically hold a meeting where we thought we could space out. But as they look to their reopen plan and know that there are quite the limitations on the use of their buildings, that would not be available to us. And that will remain the same for some of our programming as far as Parks and Rec go. That is our main facility, so that won't be available to us. So this fall and winter may look very different around here for activities and meeting usage, but we will find a way to safely meet, whether it be in this venue or if we can find a different. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:01.
Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
I wish you all a good evening and stay safe, stay healthy. Wear your mask.
Too.
Aye.